SwitchBot have finally released the third generation of their popular curtain robot, bringing with it a ton of improvements that make it the best curtain robot yet. Now, for those wondering what the hell a curtain robot is, well, it is what it says on the tin. A little robot that sits on your curtain rails and then can open and close your curtains for you, which is a really, really neat way of creating a smart home out of your pre-existing, not smart curtains. Now, they do two versions of this one that uses a U-rail attachment and the curtain rod version that I'll be testing today. So why is this third generation so special? Well, it solves a ton of problems or issues that I had with previous versions. The first and most glaringly obvious is the noise levels of the motors. Now, it's all very well and good using the curtain bot to close the curtains at night, but let's say that you wanted the curtain bot to open the curtains in the morning so that you can wake naturally with the sun and the birds. Unfortunately, the level of noise that the curtain bot used to produce would just wake me up immediately. Well, with the Curtain 3, they've supposedly solved this noise problem, and when scheduling the curtains to open or close at certain times, you can have a new option for quiet drift. Now, this will set the motor at a much slower, nearly silent movement, slowly opening your curtains to avoid disturbing you. Now, I didn't believe the marketing hype, so I decided to run it through the decibelometer. But first, I wanted to test out the SwitchBot Curtain Robot 2 to get an idea of how loud it used to be. Now, I have a particularly quiet living room, which hits an ambient background noise level of around 30 decibels. This is about 10 to 20 decibels lower than an average living room in a town where you might have passing traffic or hooded youths smoking flavoured battery acid sitting on your wall outside. So, this is a perfect environment to test the sound levels of the curtain robots. Now, you can hear that although there's very, very little noise in the room at all, which is being recorded on a Sennheiser MKE600 shotgun microphone, when running the Curtain Bot 2, it increases to around 48 decibels at a distance of 20 centimeters away, which is why it wakes me up straight away in the morning. Now, with the Curtain Bot 3 in the standard mode, it may surprise you to learn that it actually increases to 55 decibels at 20 centimeters away. So it is in fact louder in standard operation, but hold that thought for a second, because the real miracle happens with the new quiet drift mode. When this is used, it moves a lot slower, almost so slow it's hard to tell it's even moving, but it's so quiet that even at 20 centimeters away from the decibelometer, it registers no change above the ambient room noise, meaning that the literal sound of silence is louder than the motors of the SwitchBot Curtain 3. So quite simply, unless you sleep in one of those specialist dead silence rooms, then you will not be able to hear this at all. Incidentally, because the quiet drift mode is slower, it means that if it starts to open whilst you're in your birthday suit, you've probably got time to hide or possibly even get changed before your curtains open fully, exposing yourself to the world. Which is not the case with the SwitchBot Curtain 2, or even in the normal mode, where it opens the curtains pretty fast and will leave you standing there bollock naked in front of your postman. Now, moving back to it being louder in standard operation, this is due to a few things. Incidentally, my figures are slightly higher than what they say on the SwitchBot website, but this is due to the distance of measurement that I was using. I believe that SwitchBot were taking their measurements from around 1 meter's distance away, whereas we ran the tests at around 15 to 20 centimeters distance, so that I could truly test how quiet the quiet drift mode was. Now, the reason it's louder in general use without using the quiet drift function is because it's larger and slightly heavier than its predecessors, but more importantly, it also has a much stronger motor, making it more capable of moving heavier material. In fact, SwitchBots say that the motors are twice as strong as the SwitchBot Curtain 2, so if you have a particularly heavy set of curtains made of the finest velvet, then this is probably the first model that's capable of actually moving them. Now, the statistics on paper say that this is actually capable of moving curtains up to 15 kilograms. What do the curtains have to be made of to weigh that much? Solid lead? In all seriousness, this new motor and added strength is really important in making sure that it suits all users, especially with those perhaps with extra long windows or those with big glass folding doors, and also for those using blackout curtains, which are much heavier than regular standard curtains. Now, this change in design and motors aren't the only important upgrades. They've also updated the optional solar panel as well. Now, the idea behind the solar panels is to provide the curtain bots with the energy to power their internal batteries without you having to faff around charging them through the USB port on the very, very bottom. Now, although it only takes a few seconds to unhook the actual rod section of the device, you press these two buttons and pull it out. It still is a bit of a faff to do, and especially if you actually can't reach your curtain rod. It might be too high for you, which isn't a problem I have at nearly 7 foot tall. But for other people who are regular height, might find it a bit difficult. This is where it comes in handy. Either way, the solar panels remove that hassle completely. The big problem with the old solar panels was that, in my opinion, the method was a bit awkward. Most people weren't able to have the solar panels attached to the actual curtain robots themselves simply because the curtains, or most rods, are actually mounted above the window alcove. So mounting it there, you're not actually getting any sunlight to charge the robot itself. What you would have to do is hang the panel lower down on the curtain itself so that it could reach the light, and then you'd then have to trail a cable all the way up to the curtain bar. It just wasn't the most elegant solution. Well, the new one is actually quite genius. With the new one, it's quite genius in that you can attach the panel to the robot through a locking mechanism, and then it then hangs down below the robot on an articulated arm with a more solid construction than a dangling cable. The panel at the end can then be angled by pressing the button and turning the panel to the most optimal angle for the sunlight. This is a much nicer solution in my opinion, and it looks a lot neater, meaning you don't have to as well attach anything to the curtains themselves, which is beneficial if you ever want to change your curtains or even remove the curtains for washing. Now, the last huge benefit of the 3rd generation curtain bot is the support for Matter straight away through the SwitchBot Hub 2, which I reviewed a few months back. Seriously, if you haven't seen that episode, you won't believe what you can actually do with it. So go and check that out straight after this episode, and I'll link that below for you. But being Matter enabled, it now gives you the ability to use this in almost any form of smart home system. Now, in my case, I'm using mostly Amazon, which means that I can control the curtains with my voice and build it into routines and automations in partnership with the rest of my smart home. So, for example, if the lamps go on, I could set the curtains to close, or by holding down the flick button on my bedpost, for example, I can get it to shut all the curtains in the house automatically at the touch of a button. Now, the SwitchBot Curtain Robot is just such a brilliant addition to the smart home in my opinion, because it just turns what you already have into a smart device. And you know I love that sort of thing. Perhaps the most surprising thing about this new device, however, is that although the motor is stronger, there's a new design and it has some new features which puts it miles ahead of the previous versions, SwitchBot have brought this out at the same price as the previous one. Pretty much. It's currently sitting at £89 on Amazon, and I think this is an absolute bargain to add smart functionality to your curtains, and perhaps the only solution for an actual curtain rod to my knowledge. Most of the curtain devices focus on tracks, which are fine, but I've always been a stickler for more classic looking things. So the fact that I can keep my curtain rods but make them smart for under £100 is awesome. Although, quick disclaimer here, if you have a curtain setup like mine where there's two that meet in the middle, you're going to need to buy two of these. And if you need to do this for every single window in the house, it will start to add up. I think with the stronger motor and ability for it to move 15 kilograms, however, means that in theory you could replace every single pair of curtains in your house with just one that opens from one side. Because one bot will be sufficient. And doing that, I think, will be cheaper than buying 2 curtain bots for every single window. And I really don't have anything to criticize on this release. If anything, it's exactly what this lineup needed. A stronger, quieter device at a similar price point to what it previously was. So the SwitchBot Curtain 3 gets my thumbs up, for sure. I'll leave a link below, guys, so you can check it out for yourselves. It's definitely worth doing. And if you haven't seen what I was able to do with the SwitchBot Hub 2, please go and check out that episode 2. It'll blow your mind. But other than that, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.